Grace and peace, everybody. We are back. Happy Tuesday to y'all. Hopefully you are having a fantastic morning. I also hope that you didn't already have coffee, because I'm going to tell you right now, I got a guest here today that is going to make sure you're very awake. So you're not going to need your coffee. You're not going to need it. So go ahead and save that Starbucks, save your Dunkin' for tomorrow, because this is going to be a great show. Shout out to everybody who's already jumped into the best live chat on the internet. Everybody knows that I've been talking about it for the last couple days, that I'm going to have Ammy Kozak on. And guess what? We got Mr. Kozak in the building. He's ready to go. So with no further ado, please make sure you hit that like button. Please make sure you share this with all your friends as well. Thank you so much to the mods who are already making sure. Y'all go check out Ammy's house podcast on YouTube as well. Check them out on all the other different social platforms. We'll be going over those throughout the day as well. But you know what? Y'all tired of talking to me. Y'all tired of hearing from me. I already know. I know y'all did not come here to hear me. You guys wanted to hear Mr. Kozak. So let's go ahead. Ammy Kozak in the building. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Great to be here, Jason. Thanks so much for having me. How we doing, folks?
I think they're doing quite well. They're doing quite well, man. Very happy to have you, man. Thank you so much for popping in today.
Pleasure.
I do have some questions I wanted to ask you, but I didn't ask the original question that I should have asked you. Who's Ammy Kozak? Like, who are you as a person? Like, who's this guy?
I don't know, but I know, you know?
We weren't ready.
It's okay. That's okay. You weren't ready. Ammy Kozak.
We were not ready for that.
Ammy Kozak is a comedian. I am a comedian, commentator, musician, podcaster, firing on all lanes these days. I started out really in the music world, doing music for film and television. I come from, I'll take it way back, born and raised in New Jersey, just outside New York City. Okay. I'm Jewish, modern Orthodox Jewish. So that kind of means you're in both worlds of, pretty observant, religious, attending a part of a Jewish community, private Jewish day schools, learning about Judaism, but also learning about the secular world. So we're sort of in both the modern world and, deep religious roots, and became a professional musician out of college. I went to the Berklee College of Music, studying music for film and television, lived in LA for about 10 years, doing primarily music for film and television, have a band called Distant Cousins. We're still active to this day. It's like indie folk pop. It's a folk pop trio. And then come 2019, 2020, I started doing a lot of online content, a lot of comedy. I was always a socially funny guy. And professionally, I was more in the music world, but then I jumped kind of headfirst into comedy and started doing a lot of stand-up, moved back to New York in 2021. And I was always very proud of my identity and my community and where I came from. I wasn't necessarily talking about that publicly. It wasn't part of my profile that I put out there, but I didn't hide it. But then post October 7th, I began really commenting pretty actively about and offering insight as to what was going on overseas in the Middle East and Israel, and just my insights. And what I saw was sort of a real moral distortion and a lot of lies and deceit going on out there. And I had my podcast going at the time, which shifted into that world. And that's sort of how I became also part-time commentator, advocate. And found myself in some interesting conversations along the way.
I love it. So what you're saying to me, if I understand you correctly, is that piano, that keyboard behind you, that guitar, those are not props. You mean business.
Yeah. What have we got here? Let's see. What?
Wait.
I don't know if you can hear it, but there's let's see. I have
skills
something
there.
A little bit of
skills there.
A little bit of here with Jay Witt. Yes. Yeah.
We got a theme song now. We got an Ammy theme song. Get out of here. Clip that.
Yeah. We'll see. Yeah. So I come from that music world, and I've been in that game a long time. So not props.
I love it. So you're a comedian. When did you find out that you had a skill, a talent for impersonations and such of that nature? When did you? How did you hone that skill? And then when did you find it? And how did you hone it?
Well, when I used to walk into the rooms, the lights would flicker. No, I'm just kidding. We'll get to that. But even as a small child, I mean, the very first things I ever did, as a kid, were entertain my parents' friends. We'd be up in the summer. They'd have their friends around a dining room table at meals, and I could imitate all their friends. I could do all the voices. I think I taught myself how to sing initially, and became a singer by just copying other singers. So I developed a knack, and my ears got pretty attuned to mimicry and just doing impressions of teachers in school. It was kind of my thing. I was the class clown and always
No
making people,
way.
always had that knack for it and really got off on doing that. And it wasn't until I started using social media and really discovering the power of it to build an audience that I could really, showcase that on a much wider scale.
So you're a good impressionist. You're good at mimicry. Then you kind of, would you say that that's the next step up is satire, and then of course using commentary with that as well?
Yeah, I don't look at it.
You really crush it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't look at it as a hierarchy, but it's more like it's another dimension. Comedy can serve different things. You're always trying to highlight some sort of truth that everyone sort of connects to, seen or unseen. Satire just means you have a specific other thing you're also trying to point out and sort of make an observational political point. I mean, satire is an effective tool at doing that because you could tell somebody something, but if you show somebody something and then they laugh, they agree with you whether they like it or not, because if something is funny, it is true in a particular way, not in a literal sense, but in the sort of broader point you're trying to make at the subconscious level. Laughter is a form of agreement, and it's very effective at doing that.
Okay. Well, you've been a master at getting people to laugh, and getting people to, I guess, agree with you. But okay, let me ask this question:
Sure.
Have you've impersonated a whole bunch of people? And you're pretty good at it. Have you ever accidentally walked into an elevator and saw somebody that you had recently impersonated, or in a restaurant or down the street? Have you ever met somebody that you impersonated?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Let's go with the ones that went well. How about the ones that have gone well? I'm hoping that all of them were good, but what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I have hit my targets many times in terms of actual, in real life crossover. One of the early viral impressions I did was Gary Vaynerchuk. I ended up opening the Gary V debut conference that he put on when he did VCon. I came out on stage with another comedian, and we did a whole fake out where they brought out Gary V. But I came out, I was like, on some real shit. Like, I love this so much. Jay Witt, it's amazing. Right? Like, well, Christian, like, we're waking up and I love that, but I don't sleep. Like, I don't need it. Right? Like, at all. Like, and it's amazing. Right? Oh, I almost slipped to the tucker there. But I ended up opening the conference with him. Most people who are secure individuals, like, really enjoy it, and they get a kick out of the impressions of them when I meet them in person. Since I've started doing people, ever since I started adding to the roster wicked, nefarious people, it gets a little more awkward. I have crossed paths in some regard, but not too much. We'll see what happens when that day comes, when I actually meet the villains in this arena, or I have, but before they really fully turned heel and became villains. I've crossed paths with certain folks. So
no, I can totally see. I can see Gary riding along with that. I can see him probably leaning in wholeheartedly on that, and he probably sat down with you and said, no, I say it more. I use the F-bomb more. I can see him probably actually feeding it.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson has shared impressions. I've had a lot of the people I've done have shared stuff. I mean, I'll give you an example. Like this, the secure, good people who are like confident in their mission and their purpose, they always love it. The ones who are, I'm calling out the grift, don't. I did James Fishback recently to try a new one, the guy in Florida who's like trying to run in Florida as the governor. And he's just like, you know what we need to do? You know what's happening? If I ever saw Bibi, I would ask for my money back. That's what I would do immediately. The very first thing is I would deport all of the Zionists in Florida back to where they came from. Go to Tel Aviv, go to Poland. That's what I would do. So I did an impression of him, and he did not like it. He said, this is the worst impression ever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, there you go. Surprise, surprise. Thanks for sharing,
Okay. I love it. So you haven't had many negatives, if I'm understanding you correctly. Not a lot of negatives, but a lot of good positive. Jordan Peterson, Gary Vaynerchuk, and such like that have kind of leaned in on it and even supported you. I love it. Now, comedy, of course, we know is used to punch up. Sometimes it punches down. Sometimes it just punches all around the room. So walk us through the minefield of being comedic without being rude, being too lighthearted on a sensitive subject. How would you handle that?
Well,
or how have you handled it? Sorry.
Yeah, the North Star is funny. Funny wins. If it's not funny, it doesn't pass the standard. Now, there's obviously certain ways to read the situation. If you're making light of something that, just happened, or the whole too soon thing of next to an event that was actually tragic, you kind of have to just sort of read the environment and feel the sense of the pulse of that. And comedians sometimes get that wrong. But for the most part, if there was something horrible, I had a stand-up show on October 10th of 2023 that I canceled because just you could feel that people coming into the room, it was so raw and so painful that, no one was in the mood to laugh about anything. And I didn't even make a funny video for a little while because every time I got online, I felt like in a world that was so morally backwards, it was very hard to just joke around, because you can only really do comedy in an environment where everybody sort of agrees on the basic, actual same values at its core, and that everything else can be a joke. But if you have actual anti-Semites in the room, actual racists in the room, people who, really believe these things and really mean these things, then joking around about them becomes very tricky, because you don't want an audience of people to laugh at an edgy joke, a racist joke, even something poking fun at something, if they actually believe and mean the things that you're poking fun at, So that needed, I felt, a course correction. But with time, you find your ways of using comedy as a catharsis, as a way to heal a situation, as a way to get through it. That's Joan Rivers. It's like, if you can laugh at it, you can get through it. Comedy is medicine. So in a way, you can kind of help to making light of a situation can provide that catharsis, can provide that way to help process this kind of stuff in a way that has a healing effect, I think.
No, I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Does your family, does your family still appreciate your comedy at dinner and family dinner time?
They'll never admit it, but I do kill at home, but only, to a point. It's just that, it's like watching the pre-show. It's like being at all the rehearsals, and then when you see it out in public, you're like, all right, yeah, you guys enjoy. They've seen the pre-show. They see it all the time. So, they don't need to come to the actual show. That's for the people. And then the stuff I take home, and when your kids are small, it's fun to have a fun dad to a point. When I imitate their like friends, when after I played it, I'll do impressions of of my friends' kids, and they tend to enjoy that, or their teachers. So you find the areas that they can resonate with,
Wait, hold on. Because I didn't ask you that. You are a dad. You are a husband, a dad. How many little people do you have?
4.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Boys, girls, girl. What's the mix?
Girl, boy. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Who's the favorite teacher that you like to impersonate? I'm a former classroom teacher, so
nice.
I appreciate good second grade teacher comedy. So
sure,
I'm here all for it. So feel free to unleash on second graders.
You always, I don't know, I'm not thinking of anyone too specific, but you have your range of styles of teacher. You have the like neurotic but trying to be like calm one on the parent teacher. Like, so she's doing well. We're struggling a little, just a little with the comprehension, but it's okay. That one,
right.
There's always that profile. There's the one who was, who's definitely been through stuff, who's been on acid trips and was a former hippie and now is like settling down. Like she's in her 60s.
Right.
Boy, does she have, flashbacks in the middle of the class. Like, like I like those. Those are fun. The hippie ones, like the ones for Billy Madison, who like, paints her face with glue and does Tai Chi while the kids are doing recess.
Oh my,
Miss Lippy, this is Miss Lippy's time, so stay outside. So there's those, I love I run the gamut, so it repeats itself.
I love it. All right, so if you had to drop impressions tomorrow and only speak as Ammy, no characters, no voices, none of the others, what's the message you would most want people to hear if you were just speaking as yourself?
That's interesting. I do think that, I've always liked to make people dance with music, make them move, make them laugh. And then post October 7th and the October 8th moment, it's making people think, like not taking for granted a lot of the things that have infiltrated our culture with so much grievance and victim mentality is a lack of gratitude and appreciation for, how good we have it in our Western civilization for good reason. These are values and cultural things that are worth protecting and conserving. A lot of the grievance comes out of luxury, whether it's on the far left and you have sort of the upper middle class college kid voting for Mamdani because they feel they want to be oriented towards some sort of purpose and feel virtuous and signal that virtue to the world. And then on the woke right side of things, just having no sense of appreciation for the matters of degree to which countries are better than other countries, which countries generally are good versus generally are evil. There's such a lack of appreciation and gratitude for that varying sense of degree here, to say, oh, America and its allies in Israel or wherever, they're just as awful as some of the worst regimes on the planet. This moral relativism that's permeated the conversation, where people just are, they say take one red pill, don't take the whole bottle, don't get black pilled, and just not trust anything. There is the truth. There is corruption. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's distrust, and the government in some respects, in certain instances, have earned that. But don't lose your discernment. Don't lose your ability to use critical thinking. Don't just play blind tribalism. Really assess these situations and appreciate the world that the West has built, that the U.S., that this country has built, that's worth conserving. If you lose sight of that, if it becomes so demoralized, you will slip into a world that is really going to victimize you, and that is much, much, much worse than what we have now. And I would say take responsibility for your own life, and don't look to communities or people that have succeeded with resentment, envy, or bitterness. Look to them with emulation, admiration, and you will have a much better lot in life.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Why is it that you feel that because that small block right there is right on the button, appreciation and gratitude. Why is it that you feel like you're dialed in so well on understanding it? But you were born here just like many of the people that you were referring to. We're not talking about people who come from another place or from a different situation. They were born here too. Why is it that you have the perspective that you do?
It's not some secret sauce. It's all the tried and true things that work for millennia. If you focus on relationships, family, community, in that order, you have a strong nuclear family. That's part of a community of nuclear families that stands for certain values like God, religion, education. And that's sort of at the very local level. You grow up with a sense of purpose, orientation, wanting to contribute, wanting to build a life for yourself under those shared values and principles, finding people that share those values, finding community to be a part of. You need that in the chaos of this world. If you're not oriented properly towards common purpose, common values, a common community, you can be totally lost in the abyss. And what happens is there's sort of two responses to that. You can look to those who were able to do that with resentment and bitterness, which is what you're seeing sort of on the woke right now. Right. These figures who looked, I asked them, like, if you got rid of all the Jews, if you got rid of AIPAC, would your life suddenly vastly improve?
That's a fantastic question.
What has happened when they do that in the past? When you get rid of the people you are so jealous and resentful of, when you actually carry out your ideas and execute them fully and manifest them in the real world, you get destroyed in the process. Anti-Semitism is even less my problem. Anti-Westernism is less problem. It's the problem of those who hold those views. Just like in a one-to-one relationship, if you're bitter, narcissistic, and resentful, it damages the vessel that holds such toxic viewpoints, much more so than the person who it's targeted at. Obviously, safety and security is important. But again, I think for a lot of people who, Thomas Sowell, and a great economist that's a big influence on me intellectually, has said, if there's a choice between blaming oneself and blaming others, people seldom blame themselves. There's nothing easier than when things aren't right in one's life to just look for someone to blame, whether it's the patriarchy or colonialism, apartheid, like oppression on the left, or psyops, conspiracy,
Zionism.
Design, whatever it is, control, psyops, globalists on the right. Pick your boogeymen. They do the same thing, the same exact MO. And the only thing they don't do is focus on their own life, their own way to improve. And that's sort of what Charlie Kirk's message was, get married, start a family, be part of a community, work hard, have discipline. There's a thread there, even from the Gary V's of the world to the Charlie Kirks of the world, and Jordan Peterson, which were about, before you can change the world, before you can start pointing to boogeymen and conspiracy, like, work on your own life, the things you can control.
Wow.
And life will be so much better. You have to build up on that foundation. If you try to start from this macro sense, it all collapses, and there's a lot of destruction done in the process.
Man, that's right on the money. So I say, I believe I might have gotten this from Jordan Peterson. He says make your bed or clean your room. I say
Clean your
sweep around
room
your
like
clean your
that.
room.
Clean your bloody room. It's like, well, yes, that's what he said.
I say sweep around your front door, and I tell this joke about there's a bald patch of grass in my front yard. My HOA doesn't care about at all about
Yeah.
any global issue. They care about the fact that there's a bald patch in my front yard. Get that bald patch resolved. You're worrying about global issues. You're worrying about this, and you got weeds in your front yard. Why don't you fix the weeds in your yard? And it might actually help the weeds in your neighbor's yard, which conversely will help the neighborhood if y'all just start working on your own yards. So I think you're right on the money there. I absolutely love it. Okay, I got a question for you.
Sure.
And we'll take this one seriously. We did kind of joke that maybe you would answer some questions in character, but this is a good question right here. Thank you so much. 1882 question. What was the takeaway after doing a podcast with She Who Shall Not Be Named with Candace? What was it? What was the takeaway?
She who shall not be named. The takeaway, well, look, at the time, the very first podcast we did, there was a lot of reaction to when people were getting things wrong, especially as Israel and in Gaza, when that war was going on, there was a combination of bad actors who were peddling falsehoods, the ones that always did historically, left-wing press, BBC, misreporting, misleading, distorting. And there's a lot of people who like willfully distort the narrative and are deceptive. And then there's a lot of people for the very first time entering this space, seeing this for the first time and having questions, because for the first time, this conflict was really at the center of pop culture in a way that it never had been before. I mean, I've been following what's going on in Israel. I have family there. I'd lived there for a year after high school, between college. I'm very connected to the issue and I'm very educated on it. But a lot of people were entering with questions, curiosity, ignorance. And so I thought that a lot of people who obviously for good reason felt vulnerable and fragile after October 7th, it was such a trauma to what had happened that they reacted to anybody who were getting the issues wrong with the same tools. When all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so they weren't discerning between evil and ignorance, hate and ignorance. Now, at the time, Candace was presenting as someone, starting to veer off this issue and asking questions that were obviously and saying statements that were ignorant and wrong. But I wanted to approach that first because there were so many people. What they would do is you'd write a hit piece or an article, you'd name and shame, and you essentially basically message to your own echo chamber, and you'd get encouragement from your own echo chamber, but it didn't actually do anything I felt constructively across the aisle to help maybe move the needle and provide some clarity on the issue. I called her out in a tweet. She was starting to tweet some ridiculous things. She shared a tweet from the Queen of Jordan, of all people, saying how Jews were weaponizing anti-Semitism to silence people into compliance. Now, I just felt like she was representing a viewpoint that was really misreading the October 7th and 8th moment and applying sort of a BLM cancel culture environment to an environment that I think it didn't apply, even though there were parallels. And there's two approaches there. You can sort of name and shame and scream and yell about it and get all upset. But I figured, hey, here's an opportunity. I did call her out rather firmly on Twitter. I think she had been a fan of some of the other early impressions I had done. And she invited me on the show to discuss it. So I was like, okay, this is an opportunity to show how to have a civil dialogue, an educational opportunity to demonstrate my view. I'm not afraid of people getting the issue wrong. And I don't think people in the Zionist or Jewish community should be afraid of ignorance. And that was what happened at the time. And we had a conversation. She was still on the Daily Wire at the time. And I think being civil, I didn't go on the attack. I really tried to kind of listen. And I felt at the time there's a difference between ignorance and hate. And hate is one thing, and that should be dealt with accordingly. And ignorance should be dealt in another way, because there is this middle that can easily be corrupted by all these dangerous, nefarious actors and pathologies. And then there's the people that actually peddle the dangerous pathologies. There's a difference between the two. So I wanted to make an attempt to do that. Now, we had a civil conversation. I think it was received really well. And I left it at that. About a few months later, she kept going down the rabbit hole, and I think demonstrated herself to really be much more resentful and wicked and have actually bad intentions. But I felt it was necessary to button up our first conversation, revisit it. And it was sort of post Kanye West and, going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, not some Jewish people. Candace kept inserting the word some every time she would quote the tweet. She would misquote the tweet. And I started to see, I really didn't appreciate, having that first conversation, in good faith, and then seeing her patterns of behavior continue. And then we had one more final conversation. I debated Dave Smith on the episode, and then we did a follow-up episode, just her and I. Thought it kind of ended decently. It was a little more contentious. And then the day after that episode aired, she airs an episode. I thought we had reached an understanding, but then the day after an episode was aired where she doubted the Mengele experiments and said, I just think, why would you do that? It just seems really, really bizarre, like a waste of time and supplies, and started really insinuating, just introducing more and more toxic, gross, offensive, dangerous ideas, distortions of history, really, really nasty stuff. And then after that, I was just like, you know what? It's starting to be very, very clear that she's not a truth seeker here with intellectual curiosity. There's a lot more of a wicked, nefarious game going on. And so, but, I still stand by the conversations as demonstrations and how to, in a measured, calm way, deal with ideas you find objectionable. And there's a difference between the person and the ideas they're putting out. Someone could tell you in their heart they don't feel a certain way about anything. Fine. I believe you. That's what's in your heart. I can't tell you what's in your heart. It's sort of like a left-wing tactic to say what's in people's brains and their hearts. Right. I could say, fine, you say you don't feel the way. I don't care what's in your heart. I don't care what you feel inside. I'm judging your behavior. And right now we've entered currently not the marketplace of ideas. We are now in the marketplace of conduct. Okay. So whenever you hear this, then come on and debate me. Let's discuss it. Just remember, we're discussing conduct at this point, not ideas. And I think we've seen that, especially post Charlie Kirk, and how Candace is handling Erica Kirk, his widow, and the things she's doing and stooping lower and lower to the depths of real, wicked, evil types of behavior. And people like Tucker, who are doing all these kinds of things to sort of mainstream the worst ideas that have been put to bed for a long time, we're judging conduct. So let's remember to make a distinction between conduct and ideas.
No, I love it. Since you brought that up, I do want to ask, what do you think about the way that Tucker and Megan have been dealing with Candace? And let me throw Brandon Tatum in there as well. Do you feel like they are fair dealers? Do you think they're just trying to, be measured? What is your thought about how they're dealing with Candace? And of course, what you already know, who Candace is.
Well, each one of them are slightly different cases. Again, I think we like to label everything under one thing, but human beings are complex, complicated creatures. Everyone has their own avatar online that we're judging in this theater of internet commentariat. That's the world we judge. And behind that scene, there's all kinds of complicated relationships abound, So let's take, for example, I don't know, Tucker. I think Jeremy Boring said it well, is much more shrewd. I don't think Candace even knows what she doesn't know. I think it's become very evident as far as her actual knowledge and understanding of the issues is very shallow. And it's more that she's a creature of provocation and self-aggrandizement, wants to keep building the audience, keep provoking. I think if she made comments about Israel or Jews and no one reacted to it, like not a single click or, not a single reaction, not a single ounce of impact, she would have moved on. She admitted it in her conversation with Tim Dillon when she said, want to know the truth? We were only going to do one episode on Brigitte Macron, but then when they reacted to it the way they did, and Tim was like, ha, 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 yes, of course, yes. So I think that that's what drives her, provocation, self-aggrandizement. I think Tucker's engaged in a little more of a political project. Jeremy Boring talked about this on Trigonometry, where he really feels this kind of playing into this grievance culture of sort of the Christian nationalists feeling, of America being drifted from its Christian roots, and also this maybe it's an axe to grind with legacy media in the form of Fox News and current new media in the form of Daily Wire, and wanting to exert his influence and his impact. And also there's I don't like to jump to the conclusions of, he's funded by Qatar and bots and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I do think bots elevate his content, but he's got an investor from a VC firm connected to Qatar in some way. So there's this weird pivot he's been doing on radical Islam and trying to sanitize the things in the radical Islamic world while trying to demonize things in the West, which is a very strange thing to say, like, look how beautiful it is here. It's beautiful. I mean, and I care about Christians. I care a lot. And then he'll talk about how, Christians who are protected in Israel and yet ignore slaughter of Christians around the world under a radical Islamic country. So, and how the populations of, Egypt and, countries across the Middle East have been de-Christianized. He doesn't say a word about it. So obviously the thing about Tucker is he plays a different game and he's more shrewd about it. He'll never say explicitly that he hates Jews or even hates Israel. He will say he hates it, but then say he loves it. He plays a game of confusion rather intentionally, so you can never quite pin him down, and it creates a sort of intellectual fog. I think that the purpose is to demoralize and create a whole wedge issue between these sort of things we've all commonly agreed upon values-wise in the West, and then he can seize that for impact and influence. I'm your guiding light. I'm your guru. Come with me. I'm America first. Meanwhile, he's been doing everything to demoralize the Trump coalition, demoralize people's faith in the West and Western values and principles, while saying, I'm the guy you can trust. Also, mainstreaming people. He says, I don't hold these horrible views, but I'll have everybody on who does, and then I'll just be like, wow, that's interesting, and he'll sanitize them and make them palatable. So it's a very he's I think one of the most dangerous in with regard to his conduct. And then you have sort of cowards in this space who will not properly stand up to these nefarious actors. Megyn Kelly seems to clearly be one of them, playing this game of under the guise of I was behind the scenes. I had this other thing who, people don't like to be demanded to make statements and do things. I can understand that can be annoying, right, but that should have no bearing on your actual positions. If you're a free thinking, rational individual with principles, then just because someone demands you to do something, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it by virtue of the fact that somebody was nagging you. And I'll give you an example. Megyn is pro-life, right? I presume she's pro-life, anti-abortion. If a bunch of people in the pro-life movement began demanding she say something pro-life, would she become less pro-life because other pro-lifers are annoying? It's like if you go to any movement or anybody on the same side of a political issue, there's a lot of disagreements and a lot of people saying you're doing this wrong or you're talking about this issue wrong. But who cares? If you're a real free-thinking, irrational actor, not motivated by emotion or temperament, then you still come to your similar conclusions regardless of others annoying you. But you've just admitted that you're reacting emotionally to these things. And I think it's a cowardice. She doesn't want to lose the audience or compromise on whatever Candace has popularized and lose her audience. I think Megyn Kelly has lost the audience a few times. She went up against Trump. Remember, he's like, there was blood coming out of her everywhere. Remember that whole conversation? She lost the Trump crowd because she thought she could go against Trump. So she came back around to Trump. Then she was on NBC, I think, and sort of played the progressive journalist thing and then had to apologize for a joke about blackface or something. Got canceled from that. So that didn't work. And now she comes back into the fold as a MAGA conservative. At the end of the day, look, I think, it's very disappointing. I think she's, presented herself as principled and at one point, and I appreciated that, and I appreciate her being outspoken, not just because it conveniently agreed with me. I obviously did agree with her points when they were more pro-Israel, but regardless, I think her is also a shortcoming of conduct, a lack of moral courage to actually call out the nefarious actors. And I can understand that if you have a personal relationship with somebody, if you've been to Tucker's house for dinner and you have a personal relationship that goes beyond the public avatars that we all watch, that can compromise you a little bit. It's kind of understandable. I get it. If I had a really close friend who was saying horrible things online, but he was somebody I knew for years before all that, it would take me a little longer, I would presume, to come out publicly on my show and condemn them. I might call them personally. I might try to talk to them. But then eventually it would get to a point was what I'd owe the audience as a commentator. Like Ben said, hey, listen, we're friends behind the scenes. I've known them for a long time, but these views are terrible. And what they're saying publicly is really objectionable. Here's why. And I think Megyn's going to regret the position she's taken with regard to Candace because, like I said, this is not about ideas. It's about conduct. And I think she sort of drew her line in the sand there. And I think it'll be a big strategic mistake and not just a moral, ethical one. But that, to me, I lump into cowardice more than someone who's peddling dangerous ideas or she's against the Jews, she's against Israel now. It's less that and more just moral cowardice not to be actually stand up to those who are peddling the worst ideas. Brandon Tatum, I'm friendly with. He's a good guy. And I think he hasn't really spoken too much about it, but he's also spoken about the fact that when you have personal relationships with people that sort of transcend commentariat, transcend politics, transcend this online theater we're watching, it can compromise your ability to speak openly about certain things because we're all human beings. And, whether it's family or friends or very close relationships, I think he has stated that he disagrees with the position she's taken, but doesn't go further than that. And if there's personal reasons for that, there's personal reasons for that. I can't hold everyone to the sort of same level of scrutiny. I have my standards, but I also can understand why that can happen. It's just the nature of being human.
I got you. Okay. No, I can respect that.
Mhm.
and I might disagree a little bit on Brandon Tatum, but not by much.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this before I get to some of the questions in the audience.
And I judge him by what he said. I mean, Brandon has been
Yeah.
very, very vocal and doing a lot of the work. And I have a lot of gratitude for that. So I think we have to approach these with a little bit of grain of salt and say, like, especially with the way people used to talk about Charlie and, you know, the guy's batting. It's not, these people are not just tools at our disposal to do our bidding and say what you want me to say in that regard. Say what you want me to say to a certain point. I mean, Megan went out of her way to defend Candace Owens. She went out of her way to try to challenge Ben's assertions and categorizations of the things she was doing. And it just became, you know, pretty disingenuous or willfully blinding yourself. I think people can convince themselves of that they're doing all sorts of things and motivated by all sorts of things, you know, and they get very offended when you try to assume their motivations. I'm just judging the conduct, and it's been pretty cowardice on Megan's part for sure.
No, for sure. Like I'll talk about Brandon Tatum because I brought him up and I see a couple people's comments about him. Example being Brandon Tatum was very big chested about the fact that he and Candace have a relationship and they're friends and he sees her as a sister, which is perfectly fine. I don't argue that you have a relationship with somebody. However, he also made a lot of hay about how he loved and respected Charlie Kirk and actually gave funds to the Kirk family, went on AmFest and brought that big check out and all that kind of stuff, you know, because he wanted everybody to know that he supported Erica Kirk. Well, there's a problem with your first statement because your sister is attacking the woman that you say you support. You just gave $300,000 to. So now we have a problem now. So like, what's the purpose of you giving money if the money that she's spending is going to lawyers to pay to defend her against your sister? So that's where I have a problem with Brandon. I'm like, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that you've thought this all the way fully out because that doesn't work. Like you're going to have to do something about this. You can't support Candace, sell her merch, be her merch distributor, and then also support Erica and give her funds when you sell a shirt on her behalf. There might be a problem there.
The untangling of this sort of thing is challenging and difficult. So I approach certain people with I give more people grace than others. I think in his case, I mean, I'm not exactly familiar with all the history, but they built the whole Blexit movement together. They have a deep, long relationship. That's why Charlie couldn't properly publicly condemn Candace either, even though behind the scenes, the amount of damage she's since done since his death, and even before that, was a huge liability. But again, Dennis Prager took, I don't know, a year or so to write a strongly worded, very, very precise letter, actually taking to task everything Candace had done. And he made it much more about her conduct than anything personal about her. But, you know, that's ultimately it's Candace who's doing the damage, right? The secondary nature are those who call it out in the various ways they do. Some people didn't like that I went on and had civil conversations with her at one point. Very few, but some people did. And, you know, I would say focus most of the energy on the dangerous, nefarious, evil people who are pushing these pathologies, these distortions, these lies. That's where most of the energy should be concentrated, not on who's doing it as right or wrong as we'd like. You know, it's just, at a certain point, everyone's oriented in the same direction. And for various reasons, not everybody can meet the standards that we'd all necessarily like to see, but do the best you can to keep people honest and, you know, summon your own courage to do it. And we're all focused, the good, decent people of the world who have, you know, the same orientation, especially with regard to what Erica Kirk is going through, what the West stands for. You know, I would say, you know, channel all of our energy in the right direction where it belongs. Like, don't forget, it's Candace who's making this increasingly difficult for people who once had really close ties with her, relationships with her, built businesses or movements with her. You know, I wasn't in that position, and a lot of people weren't. And again, like I remember in the early days, people made demands of Ben Shapiro that he could just snap his fingers, you know, but decisions had been made and people made investments and things. And yes, you know, you have to come to terms with that, but a little bit of grace in that regard, and look at how the people are, what statements they're making themselves. Now, I don't apply that to everybody. It's a matter of degree and discernment over the level of which someone's displaying cowardice versus someone who is doing the best they can, you know?
Okay. I can dig it. I can respect that for sure.
You know.
What are your thoughts as I do want to get to the questions from the audience, but what are your thoughts about TPUSA allowing and still having Tucker Carlson on stage? Is it a good idea, bad idea? Maybe not so much. What are your thoughts pertaining to that?
Listen, I think that the problem is that for such a long time, everybody was oriented in this battle in the political and cultural landscape against a common threat and enemy, and that was woke leftism, cancel
Right.
culture from the left. You forget a few years ago, before Elon took over Twitter, there was no outlet in the COVID crisis to explore any other ideas, to have honest conversations. You were kicked off your platforms, you were deplatformed, you were canceled. If you said COVID might have come from a lab, you were deplatformed. You were thrown off. Your career, your living could be compromised, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Could be in jeopardy. And everybody said, we have to burst this bubble. We have to pop this bubble, okay? And they were canceling everybody for talking about anything in the wake of Me Too and all the excess. If somebody made a bad comment, we would equate that to rape, so there was no discernment. Wow. There was no matters of degree. We forget that world we came from. And I think what happened was, in the world of Turning Point, any of the people who were fighting against that became so used to this instinct of being anti-cancellation, because so many people were being canceled for ridiculous reasons, for nonsense. And now in that victory, what happens? Douglas Murray says, what do you do with your victory? There's a problem there. What do you do with your victory? You put a flare up and then you see who's around. So now it's the opposite problem, where free speech absolutism is being stress tested. And too many people are confused by the idea of, hey, we're against cancel culture. That doesn't mean you have no standards or judgment of anything. But people confuse the actions of calling out nefarious, evil behavior, calling out manipulation, and having standards and ethics of conduct, confuse that with cancellation. We don't cancel anybody. So we can't ask the neo-Nazis who crashed and the Groypers who showed up at Amfest. We can't really ask them to leave because we're a big tent. It's like, no. You stand for certain things. You stand for certain principles. And you wouldn't let excesses of the far left in here to infiltrate it. So why would you let excesses of the far right? I mean, I think these are sort of sloppy misnomers of left and right. It's not like Nick Fuentes is right-wing or conservative in any sort of way. He's a collectivist too. So they meet, that sort of Occam's razor. I mean, they meet full circle in the middle between woke left and woke right, and just having those standards and principles and things that you're actually fighting for. Classical liberal values, free speech, capitalism, these kinds of things that you actually stand for. Don't forget what you're actually trying to conserve. You're conservatives for a reason. You're trying to conserve certain things. It's not just a tribal team sport. But for so long, they were so used to this one tool, one weapon they have, which was allow conversation, allow dialogue, fight cancel culture. Fair enough. But now we're in the opposite problem, where anybody who says anything deserves a platform, deserves to be spoken to. Nobody's calling for anyone to be arrested. Okay, that's what free speech means. It means the government doesn't get involved in censorship or penalizing speech with lawfare and arresting people for ideas. No one's calling for that. We are using speech also to call out these ideas and this conduct. And I think for too long, even in the TP universe, it has to reorient itself to remember its founding principles. And as a result of that, what slips through the cracks in losing sight of that are people who for a long time were on the same side, oriented against the left, like a Tucker Carlson. And now when he's starting to have ideas that are really beyond the pale, outside the box, really, I think, are doing a lot of damage, they have a lot of trouble drawing those lines. And that's what I think is required in order to have a sustained coalition going forward. If you want to be united around common principles, you actually have to get rid of those people that don't stand for those principles, that cause demoralization and confusion. Tucker, I think, fits the bill on that. And again, also audience and performance and a lot of those things are very tempting, to kind of give into. But that's what's required. That was the speech that, they allowed Ben to also speak. So I was grateful for that. So if I have a choice between like no one can speak or kind of everyone, I guess I choose the latter. But again, you have to have certain grounding principles to in order, if you have something worth preserving in this fight going forward. Otherwise, you hand the left a victory on a silver platter, by being the caricature they once called you.
Right. Okay. Wow. Real quick, let me take a quick detour. How do you study for your characters and your impersonations? Do you just watch tons of their content? Do you just how do you do it without hopefully not become a method actor, but how do you study and prepare for that?
Yeah, a method actor in this regard would not be good if I walked around the house like, what time's dinner? I don't know. Is it steak? I love steak, but I hate it. It's bad for you. I think it's one of the worst foods, actually, like terrible. I'll have a bite. Everybody has their own sort of formula. It's like a puzzle piece you're trying to unlock. You watch enough things and you sort of pick up on the quirks and idiosyncrasies of different people. I've always been able to do that. Perceive those various, very subtle things that people do, the way they move, the way their eyes move. If they have a certain laugh, style, inflection, melody, you can crack the code. And then, with Trump, it was the lips. I used to kind of do a Trump, whatever, but then once you do the mouth, you got it, Jay. It's unbelievable. Once you get that mouth movement down and the eyes and the lips, it's perfect. That's what it is. Once I got that, it was totally unlocked. I could say anything I wanted to say and probably had the best words. Probably. And you know that. So different people have their different things. It's not too academic a process. I don't, I'm not studying with notes and assessing. Sort of watching, internalizing the person, and then you channel them.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. All right. Here's a question. Jason, I have a question that might help the other artists and writers and creators that Ammy could give a take on. How do you handle criticism? I believe that this is how we learn. Perfection is not learning. And you know what? I'm going to ask you, Ammy, to answer this question as Jordan Peterson.
Aha! Well, it's like, I don't really like the way the question is formulated, because you can't handle anything unless you internalize it, and get into the belly of the whale carcass, and look how the whale might be criticizing you out through the blowhole, oriented towards the bloody heavens. Otherwise, you could wind up in the abyss, So I would not try to be exceptional, but just to try and orient yourself properly in the world. Stand up straight with your shoulders back and be a bloody lobster. So that's what I would say.
But in truth, the truth is, the worst kind of criticism is the one that you kind of agree with, If you agree with what somebody says, then it stings, Sorry, I'll give you a minute. But I would say, criticism can be good. It depends if it's constructive, if it's helpful, if it's true, I'm the most critical of myself, and I don't take it personally. As long as the criticism is really about the craft of the art that you're doing, then it can be helpful. If it's hate, it's hate. I just kind of ignore it. But criticism that's constructive, whether it's about a joke, stand-up video, if it's meant to improve it, take it for what it is. It's not me, it's the bit or the joke or the character or the whatever it is that I'm engaged in to make that better. So separating the art from the person helps to if you don't internalize it as sort of a damning of yourself in any sort of way.
Right.
Like if a joke doesn't land in an act, I'm like, all right, that was annoying, but it means the joke needs work. I'm okay.
Got it. Okay. I can respect that. I'm going to have to come back and ask you what in the world was the point about the lobster, but I want to keep this game going. I'm troubled now. I'm messed up. 1882 says this last question. Does Ammy think that she, and we're talking about Candace, is a true anti-Semite like I think she is?
I mean, I guess the short answer, at her core, I think she's a pro-Candace person. Anti-Semitism is very useful to her. And ultimately, the orientation, this isn't making any excuses for it, is like using, I think in the way that Fuentes is an anti-Semite, it's not quite the same. Fuentes is really an ideological creature with political motivations and agendas. So Fuentes' anti-Semitism is fueled by his confessed suspicion that he proudly talks about of world Jewry, world power, talks about how we need to execute the leaders of this Jewish occult. And I think he really believes that. I don't know what Candace really believes anything other than what works for provocation, but that's no excuse for what she's done. Okay. She's peddled the word, she just gave in to the very caricature of being an anti-Semite, believing actual blood libel, separating Judeo from Judeo-Christian, holding up the Talmudic Jew, an old anti-Semitic diatribe, saying Jews are responsible for the slave trade. So yeah, her brain is completely consumed and rotten with anti-Semitism. I don't care really what she says, how she feels on the inside. And her macro motivations are self-aggrandizement, promotion, influence, whatever that might be, the audience. And pathologically, yeah, yeah, I would say so. I'm just careful to use the term. I'm not holding back from using it, but it does get overused and applied in ways I don't think is applicable. I think in her, it's even worse than it's as bad, if not worse, as being a true anti-Semite, is using the anti-Semitism in every caricature under the sun and every trope. She's really an example of the brain rot that anti-Semitism causes. So I'm trying to even be over precise in my answer because there's more to it than that. I feel like anti-Semitism isn't even accurate enough, given what she's done. It's that and then some.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, thank you. Next question. Thank you so much, Ben. What do you think of the Daily Wire's videos about Candace? And I'm going to ask you to answer this as Ben Shapiro.
Do I use the hard R? The hard R is that right? I'm going to use that. There it is. I just do the eyes. It's absolutely asinine. It's just ridiculous.
I think it's nice that there are, my preference, personally, the Daily Wire is really at its best in the form of Ben's speech at Amfest. I mean, intellectually, there's just no one who could have delivered that and done that better than Ben Shapiro and what he said. He said exactly what needed to be said. To me, my hat's off at the highest regard intellectually when Ben does a long form video on Tucker or Candace or names them in his speech and explains exactly why their behavior and conduct is so objectionable and damaging. That to me is the best. I like doing the silly shticky stuff, but hey, at least to be able to push back against this, I think for a long time to try to ignore the problem, they do what they do and have fun with it. That's great. To me, the best thing they do is when they take it on intellectually because they have such an upper hand with regard to that. I mean, I defer back to Ben's speech, which I think will be a speech for, generations, met the moment perfectly. So hats off.
Would you be willing to, if they reached out to you, to help on that regard? Because I do think that you made a great point. I personally have enjoyed the snarky down in the YouTube streets mockery of Candace. I've been very pro and supportive of that. I do think that she needs that every now and then. But you just in a very quick response, I'm like, you know what? They probably should get out of these YouTube streets. They probably need to come back up to the suburbs. So if they reached out to you, would you be willing to help them at that or point that out to them? If you called Ben, do you think that would, or do you think they should continue like they're doing now?
I guess that remains to be seen if we cross paths. I appreciate when it's fun when they do that stuff. I just think also the things that they do that no one else can do, especially in the online space, are when they do the real intellectual exposés and unpackings. But again, there's different flavors and different kinds of personalities, even within the Daily Wire, who focus on different things. For instance, like when Matt Walsh did What Is a Woman or Am I Racist? Like he did, he nailed that. So there's areas in satire for what they're for in the Daily Wire space too. I'm not knocking it. But again, I just think what really stands out to me is, the YouTube streets are fun. And I really, when they emphasize that is so needed, moral clarity and, doing the kinds of things that no one else can do. And I credit Ben for doing that. But hey, we'll see if the paths cross and it makes sense. I'm always happy to play ball.
I love it.
Have a good time.
Okay. Ammy, I'm being held hostage by the comment section. I'm just going to have to they want it. They just need it. I wasn't going to do it. I'm going to big screen you. They just want an impersonation of Candace. You could be Candace ordering her drink at Starbucks, Candace going to the car mechanic, whatever. Just give these people what they need, Ammy. They want a Candace person.
Can you tell me the woke Christian? What's the woke Christian origin?
Oh, okay, real quick. So when I started this channel, and I can't get it cleaned off. Sometimes it still pops up in different places. When I started this channel, I was addressing Christians who were professing to be woke. They had embraced Black Lives Matters, social justice, critical race theory, and it was truly not reflective of the Christian faith. They would say things like, Ammy owes me reparations. I said, well, how would you give the gospel to him after you just lied on him that he's a racist? Like, how does that work? And so it started out by me writing these little tweets every day. Hey, dear woke Christian, how does this apply? Or how do you do this? It became a blog, which metastasized into videos, and that's how we got to here. Last year, I decided to move from Dear Woke Christian because woke as a name really didn't, when I started it, it was very edgy. Like a lot of people like, whoa, woke Christian. Like, whoa, it brought a lot of attention. Well, the name woke doesn't really mean that much anymore. So it kind of lost its passe.
Right.
But then also, or cachet rather, but also I realized that people didn't know who my name was. So I would talk to people I'd been talking with somebody for a year and they didn't know what my name was. They would always call me Dear Woke or DWC. I'm like, wait, do you know my name is Jason? And she said, I didn't know that. I'm like, how do you not know my name is Jason? So I decided to move from Dear Woke Christian to the Jay Witt podcast just for a little bit branding. And then also I could talk about some things that didn't fall under the purview of woke in the Christian church. And I could talk about different things.
All right. So I'm going to give you the real origin story of your podcast. The truth.
Oh, no.
As Candace Owens. Here we go. Ready?
Here it comes.
All right, you guys, we're back. We are here back. We're going to talk about a certain podcast channel, a very certain one. Jason Whittaker has a podcast called Dear Woke Christian. But guess what? I don't think it's very Christian. It's definitely not very Christian. It's not part of the church. We're going to expose that. The J in Jay Witt, obviously, it's so obvious. J stands for Jewish. He works for Mossad. He works for the Zionists. And we're going to talk about that because I know this. How do I know this? Because I had a dream. I had a dream last night. I had a really vivid dream last night. It might have been a wet dream. I'm not sure. I'm not sure in a Christian podcast you can say that. It was very raw. It was very edgy. No pun intended. But Charlie came to me in a dream and he told me the origins of Jason Whittaker's podcast. The J stood for Jewish. Okay. I'm sorry. He was a Frankist. It was a Jewish podcast and he was a plant by Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu, obviously, this podcast started taking off in the past 2 years. I don't think that's a coincidence. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. And we know that. How do we know that? I don't know, but I know. I just feel it's true. I don't know it's true, but I feel it's true. And we're going to talk about that. We're talking about Jay Witt. He used to talk to woke Christians, claiming Christians were woke, which is insulting. Why would you say that? Why would you say they were woke? You don't know anything about Christians. I became Christian, and we all know the J is his attempt to insert Judeo-Christian. We're not going to let him do that. We're not going to let him do that, okay? We're not going to let him do that at all. He's actually an Israeli. He's from Israel. He went on a trip to Israel where he met with Bibi Netanyahu, Ehud Barak, and Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know if that's true, but I know it's true, and I feel it's true, okay? We don't know it's true, but we're going to take a look at the Epstein files and see if it comes up. We're going to take a look at that, and I know that because guess what? Astral projection. I walked into a room, the lights flickered, and in the buzzing of the lights on, I heard Jay Whittaker. I heard it. Okay? I heard it. And I know it's true. And my mommy sleuths, I want to give a shout out to my mommy sleuths who've been watching his stream every day as he tries to make fun of me. You guys, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. They think we're stupid. But I got an astral projection. And I was able to compartmentalize all that information. To expose Jay Witt as a Jewish wit, as a Jewish nimwit, working for the Zionists, working for Bibi, and that's how his podcast started. He's obviously getting 7K with every stream, and we know this because I had a dream about it. All right, thank you, my mommy sleuths. Tune in next week. We're going to try, and he's welcome to come on my show anytime and debate this. He's not going to do that. He's not going to do that. So we're just going to have to cover it ourselves. Tune in next week when we reveal the origins of Brigitte Macron's penis and her left ball. Thanks for watching, guys. How's that?
I'm officially, I have some sound clips that I use periodically, but
right.
I think you have officially retired many of them. So I'm going to be clipping those out. So I want you to, we'll say for the last time, you have completely, for example.
I don't know, but I know. You know? I don't know, but I know.
Well, now you've already, we're going to go ahead and clip yours and we'll use yours instead of hers moving forward. That was absolutely spectacular. Outstanding.
I appreciate you. Yeah,
I absolutely love it. And it took a minute. I mean, you nailed it. I love it. Thank you, man. That was well done. I love it. All right. So I got a couple other questions from the audience. Thank you. Thank you so much for this very kind 5562. Thank you, Jay Witt, for bringing in Ammy. Thank you, Ammy, for coming on. I appreciate him coming through. Okay, I was a certain Blue Moon said this. Thank you with the 10. Does he regret not pushing her, and I believe you're talking about Candace, all of her apartheid BS with simply asking her the street name? I don't know how that happened. Or what was that? She used the fact she saw use the fact to correct her. I'm not certain how that.
No, I don't regret pushing back. I think she's probably, maybe she's talking about when she said the Muslim quarters.
Is that okay? Okay, go ahead.
There's a viral moment where she talked about the Muslim quarters where the Muslims are allowed to live in Jerusalem.
There we go. Okay.
But I don't really regret pushing back because I said, okay, look, everybody brain farts, everybody gets things wrong when they people use phrases wrong, and Candace certainly uses phrases and words wrong. But I gave her the benefit of the doubt in that moment and said, all right, maybe she's walking around the old city of Jerusalem. She's with some Israeli tour guide. She asks a question like, and what about that? Oh, this way the Arabis, this way the Muslims. Okay. And maybe she was looking at different areas and got confused. I think in doing so, it exposed and revealed, how ignorant she was about the subject. And eventually what people don't realize is in that whole exchange, it ends with her saying, maybe I got it wrong. So because I didn't use it as an opportunity to dunk or make somebody feel stupid. And she ends the exchange on that whole subject. When I brought it up to her, like, if you were in the United States and you walked around a neighborhood and it looked run down, would you automatically assume systemic racism? Because you're applying that to Israel. But when you walk around here and you go around certain areas that are run down, you don't jump to the conclusion that, oh, America must be systemically racist because I'm in some inner city neighborhood and it must be a racist country. No, you don't necessarily jump to that conclusion. And so she says, maybe she got it wrong. I might be the only person on earth that's gotten Candace to say such a thing. Maybe I got it wrong. Most people, they don't reach those kinds of understanding. So I don't regret it. I think that's how you handle situations. If you assume positive intent when you're engaging with someone face to face, coming in good faith and assuming positive intent will just allow you to have a much better, more constructive conversation. If you're not in it to win it, but you're in it to sort of at least, get people to understand themselves and each other a little bit better. It's generally better, even if it's with somebody who proved themselves later on to be much more nefarious.
So you brought up something that I think would be very good. I would like to hear your thoughts on. You said you assume positive intent from the beginning. I don't feel like Candace does that as it relates to Erica Kirk or Turning Point USA. Everything comes from a place of, I know something's wrong. I know Ammy's up to something. So whatever, and I want to go down that street. I'm going down the street that Ammy is doing something wrong. So any answer, any non-answer, any picture, any text message is always has to lead to that way, or I'm going to have to reframe it to keep going in this direction. Do you agree that that's probably why she's causing so much chaos, is because she doesn't come with the belief that somebody has good intentions from the start, or maybe just got something wrong?
Yes, but I guess there's just a palpable difference between Candace of 2022, 23 and Candace of today,
Correct.
So you just take it as it comes. People's conduct over time, as it keeps getting stooping lower and lower and lower, reflects certain MO and certain motivations. Maybe they were more concealed back then, but eventually, if you're going to make the call to engage with someone face to face, depending on what your intentions are. I mean, if you're going on Pierce Morgan, it's basically combat. You're trying to win. You're trying to get your point across. You're not really engaging in an open civil conversation across the aisle. That's not what that show is. That's not what that show's intention is. Everyone's sort of trying to make their point, and it's much more combative. And that's the style. If you're sitting on a podcast engaging with somebody, it just tends to be most effective to, if you're going to make that decision and say to yourself that there's something good to come out of this, then it's, even if you really strongly disagree at every level with the person, it's probably best to because otherwise you just get caught up in the ad hominems and personal attacks and defensive positions. You don't really get anywhere. You don't really build anything. So back then, I think she had demonstrated signs of real profound ignorance, some bad intentions, but not fully yet. And as time went on, it got increasingly worse, and obviously worse and undeniable. People forget that. They project onto the past what we have seen since. We've seen the behavior since Charlie Kirk's death in her conduct, and now have a perception of her, which is accurate. But it's hard to necessarily apply that perception to 2 or 3 years ago. and where things stood. You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay.
There were hiccups of bad intentions, and I had seen that over the years, but certainly not to the extent that we've seen now, which changes the perception and read of a person.
Okay. I can rock with it.
Mhm.
Two other questions about Judaism as a whole. Do Jewish people actually use the Talmud?
Do they use the Talmud? Certainly, depending on your level of observance. The majority of Jews in like the diaspora, across, the majority of the Jews as a whole population-wise are secular and not practicing Judaism. But those that do practice Judaism in the, you could say more the Orthodox, modern Orthodox conservative world that practice Judaism use the Talmud, sure.
Okay.
But I think in that question, it's important to point out that whatever I'm not assuming any bad intentions in the question, but the way the Talmud is portrayed by bad actors on the woke right is selective passages and misrepresentations and distortions. So if within that question, someone's trying to ask, do Jews take those passages literally to what they say? The answer is no. But the Talmud is thousands and thousands of pages of legal interpretations of Jewish law to try to make determinations about practice and ritual in Jewish law that records conversations over centuries between scholars and rabbis debating topics within the Torah. And it's broken up into it's the sort of oral tradition of the Torah. We have the written Torah and the 5 books of Moses and the prophets, and those recorded down and written down. And then all the analysis of that over time always got recorded in the various exchanges. And so using the Talmud as a framework, a legal framework, because Judaism is a living, breathing practice of ritual, of what to do on the Sabbath under certain things and holidays and those kind of things. There's a whole legal framework of religious practice and ritual that the Talmud extrapolates on, and everything gets recorded down and passed down. So, if somebody selects a certain passage in which somebody said something critical as Jews were living under, say, Christian, at the height of Christian persecution of Jews, somebody said something offensive about Christians in hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and it got recorded. That's not a dictate of what Jews are supposed to believe now about Christians. It's a recording of a conversation that took place, which one could understand in the height of Christian persecution against Jews during the Crusades or things like that. People might have said some annoying things, but we don't want to go down that road and look at what the Catholic Church has said about Jews, do we? Because they're getting all worked up about what the Christians have said, what Jews have said about Christians, and trying to demonize and paint a broad brush. But over the course of history, it's a messy history between different peoples all the time. And the Talmud basically is a recording of all those conversations. And in some cases, what's written down is prescriptive, like what to do here in this particular case. And sometimes it's just a recording of a dialogue that took place. But evil, wicked anti-Semites just take any little thing out and act like it's this representative prescriptive measure. Look at what Jews believe. And that's just low resolution thinking. They don't know what the Talmud is. They just say the Talmud, it's in their Talmud. They just say that, having no sense of what it is. So I hope that answers the question better.
Yeah. D-New just said, thank you for explaining that. So
yeah,
the person that gave the question said, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, real quick. Excellent question. What does the name Ammy mean?
Good question. Egyptian plain. No, it means the way my name is spelled actually doesn't, in the Hebrew way it's spelled, it can mean my nation. Am is nation. Ami is when you say an E at the end of a Hebrew word, it's like Tamai in the possessive. So my nation. My name is not spelled that way, so it's just kind of a nice Hebrew name. My full name is Amnon, and Ami is short for that. But Ami, the word Am generally means nation. It could also mean, I think in French it means friend, but that's generally the. It's a Hebrew name short for the word Amnon, which is just kind of a Israeli name. Not Israeli, Hebrew, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's misspelled. So you're like Oprah and how her family misspelled her name? Okay.
It's exactly like Oprah. It was the same. It was the same situation.
I need you to go ahead and so you need to answer that question like Oprah. I'm just kidding.
Okay, everyone, it's my name. What?
Hey,
yeah.
Do you have any fears? Are you worried at all about TPUSA? Or any thoughts? Maybe your thoughts, maybe worried might be a little bit much, but what are your thoughts about TPUSA moving now post Charlie Kirk?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about them?
Well, it's important to make distinctions here. I'm in no way buy into any of the conspiracies about TPUSA or the ways that Candace has tried to portray them.
Yeah.
I'm worried only in the sense of, like I said before, Ben's warning to TPUSA and the entire community and institution that if you do not draw these distinct lines and have standards to keep out nefarious, divisive figures who seek to divide and weaken the movement, then it can cause real damage. If you forget the principles that you stand for and are just playing a team sport to fight the left and win, but not actually bring anything to the table, I just don't want it to lose sight of its founding principles. And it takes, Brendan, I heard Dennis Prager say recently, like, there's good and there's evil, and there's no shortage of either one, but there's always a shortage of courage. Courage is the scarce resource. You need courage.
Mhm.
And to go against the grain, even on your perceived own side, and call out those nefarious actors who are wicked and divisive and seek to weaken you, that is important, and that's what's called upon. And so my hope is they can summon the courage to do that and not give into the temptation of audience capture or things like that. But that's my hope
No,
for
I
them.
can totally dig that.
Mhm.
Okay, I like that approach. Thank you so much. 5562 says this is a dope interview. I agree. All right, we have a fantastic guest. I love it. D79, D News, I apologize for this. What is this? She says that BB isn't a real Jew because he doesn't look Jewish, because he's white.
Mhm.
I'm so confused. Are you
Yeah.
familiar with this?
I'm familiar with the accusation. There's different ways to delegitimize the Jewish community. So some people will say the Jews have no connection to the land of Israel. There's no indigeneity. There's no history. There's no ancestry. Then some, and it kind of comes from, I say, Nation of Islam or the Black Hebrew Israelite community, will say, oh, no, the Jews do have a connection. It's in the Bible. Those are the Jews. But the Jews of today aren't real Jews. They're imposters. They attribute it to some conversion from the Khazars, and so this Turkish people, they make up some kind of other falsehood conspiracy to try to separate Jews of today with Jewish history. So either the Jews had nothing to do with it, it was never Jewish, but that can't be denied. The archaeology, the history, the Bible,
sure.
I mean, it's undeniable, the Jewish connection to the land of Israel. So the other strategy is to say, okay, they do, but these aren't Jews. Now, Jews have been in a diaspora. So when they were expelled, basically, if you go back to ancient or biblical times, let's go from here. Jews are enslaved in Egypt.
Mhm.
We can even rewind that. I mean, Abraham, right? Founding father, patriarch of Judaism, is told to leave the land and go into what was then called Canaan and became the land of Israel. Over the years, Jews were in the land and then had been expelled by various empires. The Babylonian, I don't have to get too far into the history, but over the centuries, and they built, they were expelled at various times, and then out of the land of Egypt, out of enslavement from the Egyptians, they came into Israel. They conquered Israel. They settled Israel. And made it part of and there were various kingdoms that were set up. They built the first temple. They were then under the Babylonian Empire, they were kicked out of Israel. They returned to Israel. They built the second temple. That was sort of in the time of Jesus. And then under the Roman revolt, the Romans who executed Jesus, they kicked the Jews out as well in about 70 AD. And the Jews were then, in that period, a couple thousand years ago, they were then kicked out and dispersed throughout various lands. Some ended up in what were called Sephardic Jews in Spain. Sephardic Jews originate in Spain, North Africa, parts of the Middle East, and others ended up in, Jews were often merchants on trading routes, so they ended up in various different parts and were part of different populations, and that's why you have a range of colors that are Jews are part of a multi sort of racial ethnic family under the one tribe of being Jewish, and maintain their traditions, but over time ended up being part of other populations too, adjacent to those populations, and so you have a range of colors within Jewish identity, but essentially rooted in Judaism and Jewish practice and Jewish peoplehood. All Jews. And all originated from the Levant, which is the geographic area of Israel. And so, yeah, that's how Jews. And we're not indigenous to Europe. They say go back to Poland, go back to Europe. We were not indigenous, and certainly weren't welcome there. And they were kicked out of various things. There was the Spanish Inquisition that expelled Jews. There were, the Holocaust in 30s and 40s. So we can go into the history of Jewish history. It's interesting and riddled with persecution and oppression and horrible, in Russia and Eastern Europe, pogroms, which were, demonstrations that involved slaughter and persecution of Jewish communities. A lot of it was rooted in early Christian anti-Semitism. Jews were framed as Christ killers. Jews were, framed in all sorts of various ways. And that's what the word blood libel comes from. There were these conspiracies developed about Jews that on Passover they would secretly steal Christian children and bleed them for matzah, for their matzah crackers. Just the craziest kinds of conspiracies you could think of. Wow. They were all, that was part of the culture, deep rooted in Eastern Europe. Jews were kicked out of and persecuted in Muslim countries, less so in the heyday of Islam, but still increasingly, especially closer to, as Jews, if you look at all the Muslim countries that used to have thriving Jewish communities, they were all kicked out. So, then, and that's, that's why it's really great to have a state of Israel, for a homeland for the Jewish people. So that's the short answer. That Jews have spanned the globe as they've been kicked out of their ancestral homeland, and about 51% of Jewish Israelis come from of Sephardic Mizrahi, come from North Africa, the Middle East, and are non-white, you would say. And the white Jews from the Eastern European, to white supremacists, Jews are not considered white. It's only to the leftists who consider us white colonizers that we're considered white, because some are more white passing, but. We've spanned the globe. Yeah,
I love it. Well, man, okay, this was a less serious question, so I really need you to dig deep. Ammy, can you please ramble about the demon scratching you and do the Tucker Carlson laugh while talking about the tickling it was, how ticklish it was? That was your best moment. Thank you, 10-4. All right, you ready? I know this is hard. I know you got to go deep into that wound. I know you got to go back into that place of hurt.
I was molested by a demon. Yeah, it was tickling me everywhere. Started with my feet. Stop. And he started sucking my big toe. I kind of like that, actually. That was really, really nice when the demon was doing that. But then he started tickling me, and then I became totally molested. Stop. I love it, Tucker. Keep laughing for me. I love this so much, and I hate it. Are you from Qatar? Anyway.
Well done, sir. Well done. I love it. Your impressions are spot on the money. And of course, everybody appreciates Tucker Carlson's laugh. Well, I say appreciate as tongue in cheek as I can. They appreciate that. What other qualities do you see really standing out with some of the people? And of course, the Tucker Carlson laugh, seems like he's debating himself when he says one thing and does the other. Any others that you really like, qualities that really stand out about some of your impersonations?
Oh yeah, I always noticed that the ones I admire, of the people I admire, you got Jordan Peterson's got
I agree.
Ha! Well,
his laugh is ha 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 ha. Well, yes. That was always something. Trump's lips are
yes.
Great guy. We love that. Jay Witt. He's great. He's a really great guy, Jay. We love Jay. We love Jason. He's Whitaker. Is that what we call it? Like Forrest Whitaker, right? Forrest Whitaker. He's got a lazy eye. He's a great guy, but he's got a very lazy eye. Forrest Whitaker. We know that.
Okay. Right.
Not you, Forrest, that lazy eye. But he's done well for himself using the other eye, I guess. The other eye's done very well. The other one eye's kind of lazy, but the other eye's doing great, so it works out. Different things for different people.
I love it. I would just love to be a fly on the wall when you walk into an elevator.
A fly on a big, beautiful wall, and we'll have Mexico pay for that wall. That's what we're going to do.
There we go. I just want to see you. I just want to see what would happen if you ran into Jasmine Crockett at again somewhere at a steakhouse, and how would that work?
I've always been very intellectual ever since I was a child. I've always been a very intellectually gifted person. And is that it? Is that Jasmine Crockett? I've never done that, but it's sort of like that, right? That's how she talks. I've always
sad to say that is how she talks.
Like math. I used to read math, and the teacher would say, "What's 1 + 2?" I would say 4, and I thought that was close enough. That's how intellectually inclined I was as a child.
Wow, I might have just
God.
unlocked a new one for you. Never done that before.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just was literally just throwing it out there. Just want to see.
You know, that's
Well,
how
you're
I do
welcome.
it. That's how
Well,
we
okay,
do,
now
Jay.
make sure I get credit. And when you do the
Yeah.
next, when you
You
do
got
that,
it.
make sure, credit me.
You
Credit
got
your
it.
boy.
You got it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Ami, thank you so much, man. Let me
You
make sure.
got
I
it.
think we hit all of your questions. I appreciate you. Give us as we get ready to land the plane, how about this one? Give
Sure.
us just your overall, what would be your admonishment to the audience? Most of us are here in the United States.
Mhm.
We don't know much about what's going on in Israel, but we do know what's going on here in the
Mhm.
States. And what would be your admonishment for us to maybe start working on some of those things that Ben talked about and what you spoke about earlier about taking care of this stuff here? What would be your admonishment there?
Of what to, a parting word, so to speak.
Yeah,
Here
we'll do
today?
parting words. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, I remain optimistic that what we're seeing right now is vastly overrepresented by a minority of people online that are really demoralizing the culture. We tend, our attitude is always that things are increasingly getting better in the world, but we always think it's getting worse, And I think that the problem is that you have a concentrated minority online that makes a lot of noise on the far left and the far right, and it gives you a warped picture of reality. When in fact, I think there's really millions and millions of good people out there who aren't doing that and don't believe the worst ideas that are sort of on the ascent because they're busy working, building up their families, building up their communities, doing good work at the individual and local levels, and they don't have time to immerse themselves online in this battleground space. So they're not fighting it necessarily because they're too busy and consumed with real issues, but they're not buying into it either. But the problem with that is that because it's a fractured majority, all focusing on their own lives as they should be, there's an opportunity there for people to really influence the culture and the politics in a very bad direction. And then people can find they wake up in a world they don't even recognize. So at a certain point now, it makes sense that people come late to the party to realize what's been going on. But I think it is time for that counterpunch to push back against these narratives, to fight for what's worth preserving, our values, our common values, our shared values, to be proud of being American, to be proud of our history, to be proud of what America stands for, which is a place where you can be whatever you want to be as long as you don't violate the rights of other people. You can build your own communities and your own you can live by your own values as long as you don't violate the rights of other values. And that's sort of the shared thing here, that we believe in liberty. We believe in separation of church and state. We believe in capitalism. We believe in freedom. And we believe that these Western values are better than oppressive, tyrannical regimes, that are better than authoritarianism. We believe in merit. We believe, and we honor these things as we should. And we believe in comedy. We believe in humor. We believe in humor with good intentions. We respect the ability of those people to express themselves, to build audiences, and I think that stuff is sacred. It's part of our culture and it's part of our common humanity. We believe in Judeo-Christian principles, and we shouldn't be apologetic or shy away from those things. And we should be courageous in calling out those who do stand against those things, who are anti-Western principles and values, who demoralize and confuse and make you doubt. It doesn't mean you should avoid all the warts and all of our history, but also keep everything in perspective with regard to, what has eliminated some of the worst evils in the world, and being able to, there's disagreements that can be had over to the extent to which America can be involved in foreign affairs and foreign policy and foreign aid, all, totally valid and up for discussion and debate. But just because you can have disagreements over to the extent to which America should be involved in one conflict or another, you shouldn't necessarily blind yourself to assessing who the good guys are and the bad guys are in, say, Israel versus Hamas. You can say, I don't know how America should be involved. It's an open question. But morally, I can still share my support for those people who share my values. And if you look at places like Israel or allies around the world to the United States, it's very important to know that they share American values of a free and good and prosperous and virtuous society. And I think people fall into a lot of distortions about the conflict in that regard and confuse, saying, well, I have questions about America's involvement. That's one area. But all these people hide behind that issue of this just being about foreign aid to really peddle very dangerous pathologies. and you can't let yourself succumb to that. Remember that it's worth fighting for and worth preserving.
I love it. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
So there is a question that popped up, and it's more about your preparation. So real quick, how long does a skit take for you to complete? And I'm going to add to this one. Thank you so much for the $2. The other voice, is that you usually, or is that somebody else?
It's me.
Is you? How do you do that?
Always.
Okay. So I kind of want to, all right. So take us behind the scene. Like, how long does that skit usually take? And then how do you do that with the voices?
Depending on how elaborate it is, from inception to posting, maybe my record's 30 minutes, if I think of something and then film it, could 20 minutes, 30 minutes for a nice, easy production, quick one. Sometimes if it's a longer monologue to cut up, could be an hour and a half to 2 hours, but I generally think of the idea and post on the same day,
Got it. Okay. And the voice, because it sounds like you're arguing. I just knew it was like a kid or like a producer or something that was doing that with you.
Mm-hmm.
That right there has got me, stunned me. I thought it was another person, really.
No, this is it.
You're just arguing with yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Does
listen,
anybody
that voice, the voice. Are you serious right now? Do you really believe that's the guy right here? See him? Or sometimes it's like, what do you mean? It's like, off camera guys. There's different kinds of people that speak off camera. Oh my God, really? Or, that guy, this guy, straight guy.
Now I feel bad. Like, I'm like, maybe I should have known that. Now I feel like I should have known that. Okay.
Well, it became a little cumbersome to film both characters, so I figure I'll keep a voice off screen. And then sometimes, if it makes sense, I will film myself in both. Just takes a little longer.
I got you. So now you've kicked the beehive, and now people want to know a little bit more about the craft. Do you have a favorite impersonation or impersonator, and a favorite comedian of your own?
Well, I grew up in the 90s, so guys like Robin Williams and Jim Carrey were real early, comedic heroes of mine on the screen. They did some stand-up too, but the screen characters and the things there, I really identified with that. I'm also a bit of a polymath, being a musician, so Jamie Foxx is also really up there for me as a guy who can do all the things that I connect with, from music to impressions to comedy, acting, that kind of stuff. You have your goats of SNL, the Daryl Hammonds, the Frank Caliendos, the sketch comedy icons. Frank is one of the best straight up gifted impersonators, like nailing voice and mannerisms and things like that. I'm trying to think of recent people, but yeah, I think I covered it. There's a bunch of guys in there of the impressionist comedian types who are great.
Okay, so let me ask a question, because I was raised on Saturday Night Live, but I stopped. I don't think they're funny anymore. But let's just say you could go back in time. Is there a Saturday Night Live skit that you would like to be a part of? I just literally thought of it, so I apologize if that's too off the cuff. But I'm like, man, there's some. I'll give you a little warm up. We had a snowstorm here in Georgia back in 2014 that completely obliterated the city. It is the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to the city, bar none. Okay. It's called Snowocalypse. And they brought on, I don't know the comedian's name. They did the newscast, and they brought in this guy who was like an antebellum white man. That skit, it is so funny, and it was so offensive that SNL you can't find it on their page at all. I found it, and I have a copy of it, and every now and then I watch it because it's just so funny. He's just making fun of all the things that we did. We all got on the highway. We all got stranded. It was just it was the best. And so if I could go back, I would love to just sit second chair to watch them do that, because it was exactly what we deserved. Atlanta deserved all of that. As ridiculous as he made us sound, we deserved it. So do you have one like that?
Anything within the Chris Farley or Will Ferrell heyday would have been great. Those guys can just, the way they can riff off the cuff is great. I also love Key and Peele, by the way, of the modern sketch stuff. There's some of the funniest stuff that has been made in the last decade is Key and Peele sketch comedy, and as impressionists too, and character actors, they nail it. So love their style, and anything with Will Ferrell and or Chris Farley would have been a lot of fun to be a part of. Those sort of epic elite cast member like heydays of SNL.
So, and now I'm just asking a question. I notice when you're doing your skits and when you're doing your impressions, you don't make a lot of attempts to actually look like the person. So sometimes you do put on the Tucker Carlson wig, by the way, spot on. But a lot of the time you're relying on your craft, you're relying on your voice, your facial expressions. What is that called? Is that a type of comedy rather than trying to like dress up as the person and perform and impersonate, but you're just impersonating right off the riff?
Yeah, I think it's cooler that way because then you really see the essence of the person that's being channeled when there's no, there are professional impressionists or impersonators that will dress up like show up to
Michael
a party
Jackson.
dressed up, or Michael Jackson impersonator. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're just accurate. But I think you hit the uncanny valley when you can actually channel what the essence of the person is by not dressing up like them, but just kind of summoning them, being them. And then you're really showing and exposing the core of the person, the essence that everybody sees and doesn't necessarily perceive,
No, I totally get it.
So that's
and
why
I was wondering if that was
I don't put on a Candace wig. Everyone's like, where's the Candace wig? Where's the Candace wig? Sometimes I do. When I had an interview with her and the Demon, I did it just to make a distinction between, her and someone else. But I actually try to show you what you're all seeing without any glitz and glam,
Right. And I feel like, and I didn't know if it was because you didn't want to get like offend somebody, or was it like you're saying, like I do believe it's more pristine and more raw if you're just like, I can just do it. Like right now, when you just did your Trump impersonation, or when you were doing your Tucker, you didn't have to say, hold on, wait, let me go get my wig. No, you just did it. And I think that's much better, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So
and then
I didn't know
there's certain lines
something.
you don't cross, Candace wise.
Sure.
There's certain things I could do, but I won't do, if you know what I mean. Wig is one thing, but everything else, there's occasional people in the comments who tell me to go for it. I'm like, juice might not be worth the squeeze on that one.
Right. I agree 1,000%. I agree 100%. Well, man, yeah. And somebody just said, Ray, and I agree with them as well. On the fly impersonations are the best. And I think that's probably what you did when you were at the dinner table with your family and they brought the friends around. You didn't try to impersonate the person by dressing like them, but rather just hit those points of the voice and such of that nature. I think it's great. Ammy, this has been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, man. Great to be here. Good to shoot, to riff with you. It's been fun.
Thank you, man. Now, during the live, my mods have been dropping your links to your various socials. Are there anywhere particular you want people to really go to? Ammy's house, or follow you on X, or anywhere particular? TikTok? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you're interested in funny, quick bits, you go over to Instagram at Ammy Kozak, and TikTok. It's at AJ Comedy, or you'll find me at Ammy Kozak. If you want, some quick bits and funny videos, and also some one-liners and things of that nature, Twitter is probably good for you, at Ammy Kozak on Twitter. If you want long-form conversations where we really get into it, head on over to Ammy's House, the Ammy's House podcast, with me and my co-host Michael Weber. We unpack issues of the day. If you want to listen to some music, check out Distant Cousins at Distant Cousins Official on Instagram, and so that should cover it for everyone. And YouTube has the range of it, full-length videos and sketches and things like that too. You can find it.
I love it. Are you working on anything new that we need to check out in the next couple of weeks or anything? Anything fun coming up?
Going over to the podcast. We're going to be expanding a little bit, scaling up. Going to have a new studio redesign soon. Should be a lot of fun, and some guests are lined up, so that should be fun. And I'll be touring around. I mean, I perform all over the East Coast, New York City area. I'm based on the East Coast. I'll be in Florida, LA. So keep a lookout on my social media for if I'm coming.
What's
to
up
your
with
city.
Georgia, man?
If you want, I got to make it down there on my way to Florida. Yeah.
Ammy comes down to Georgia. What's up? What's up?
Yeah,
man?
yeah. Let's make it happen. We'll put together a live episode, and I'll do some stand up. Sounds good.
I love it. I love it.
Right.
Well, sir, thank you again, man. I really do appreciate it. Take your time. Thank you for your time today.
You got it.
Guests, if you don't mind, can we just flood the chat with Ammy? Live chat. Just let him know that we really appreciate him, even though we're going to misspell it, but we do appreciate him nonetheless. Please tell your family hello and thank you, sir. I'll drop you back, but please have a great, fantastic rest of the day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jay.
All right. All right. That was Ammy Kozak. Ladies and gentlemen, thank y'all so much for the great questions. Those questions were fantastic. And I think he had a great time. We'll try to have him come back. Of course, hopefully didn't run him away. But thank y'all so much for the great questions. Thank you so much for being such a supportive audience. It really does mean a lot. I'm glad that we were able to have him come on, and it means a lot that he took the time to tap in with us today. So if y'all don't mind, do me a favor. Make sure you like this video. Comment. Let me know what you thought. Maybe it was the best impersonation. Maybe we need to do just a straight impersonation episode, right? Maybe we have him come back and just impersonate the whole show. Maybe that. No deep questions. It's all sketches. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll see. But y'all, thank you so much. This evening, I will be having a conversation. I have my panel discussion with the ladies tonight. We're going to be talking about, did feminism lie to women? So I'm looking forward to doing that. But y'all know we're on winter break. Chief Executive Second Born is at the door. She wants me to take her driving. So I'm going to go take my kid driving. Anyway, y'all have a great rest of the day. I'll see you all this evening at 7:00. Grace and peace. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Jay Witt Podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, please do me a favor and hit me up with that 3-piece special. Like the video, subscribe, and of course, share it with somebody who would also enjoy this type of content. And make sure you leave a comment, because I do pin the best comments to the top. So thank you so much for tuning in today. And until next time, everybody, grace and peace.